Hey guys, SJ from Ignore Limits here. Today I just wanted to run through some of the biggest muscle myths and mistakes I see out there. So a lot of guys, not only newcomers to the gym, but also guys that have been training for a while are actually still making these mistakes, unbeknownst to them. So I thought it'd be worth pointing out I believe there's like 14 that I'm going to cover, 14 biggest muscle myths and mistakes that if you learn, if you don't already know these things, if you implement this in your training and dieting, you'll be setting yourself up for success and getting greater results than you are now. Okay guys, so first one, longer workouts produce more results. That's actually false, and here's why. So a solid workout should last between 45 minutes and about an hour. If a normal workout for you greatly exceeds this time frame, you need to step back and take a look at how you're actually spending your time in the gym. More often than not, if you're bragging about spending hours at the gym, you're probably spending too much time actually gossiping, catching up with other gym goers, and you're having rest periods that are far too long. A shorter, more intense workout is not only more efficient time-wise, because we all have other things to do as well, but will also net you better results. So the key is exhaust the muscle via hypertrophy, so allowing a long amount of time for your muscles to recover between sets is actually counterproductive. That is, there is an exception. That's if you are training specifically for strength, in which case you do have longer rest periods. Okay, so muscle myth and mistake number 2. You should lift as heavy as possible. That's also false, and here's why. When lifting, most beginners tend to pick up the heaviest weight they can possibly lift and struggle to pump out several bad repetitions expecting to see results. It's actually imperative that good form, which is technique, comes before weight. You should be selecting the heaviest weight that you can lift with the correct form, guys, for the prescribed number of repetitions. Trying to use weight that's far too heavy with bad form is basically a recipe for disaster. You're at a high risk of injuring yourself, in which case you'll be out of the gym for an extended period of time and you will lose your gains. On top of that, if the weight's too heavy for your muscles, you end up using like momentum, so swinging or bouncing the weight off your chest, for example, on bench, or you'll be using half range of motion. So that's taking the tension completely off the muscle. The muscle isn't stimulated. If the muscle isn't stimulated, then you're not going to get growth, guys. Okay, muscle myth and mistake number 3. You should lift lighter weights for higher repetitions to get shredded. That's also false, and here's why. The myth is still going around that higher repetitions are associated with getting shredded and lower reps are associated with building overall size. That's completely not true. Your workout regime and repetition ranges do not have to change based on whether you're going through a cutting or bulking phase. Mine personally stay the same all year round. Getting shredded is entirely based upon your diet, more specifically your daily caloric intake. In order to get shredded, you need to burn more calories than you're consuming. Calories in, calories out. If you're eating too much, it doesn't matter how high the repetition range you follow, you will not get shredded. Okay, moving on. So muscle myth and mistake number 4. Sit-ups will get your abdominals popping. That's also false, and here's why. You can't actually spot reduce fat. Everybody has a set of abdominal muscles, whether they're defined or not. So that basically comes down to your body fat level. The abdominal region will begin to become visible for males at around 10% body fat and around 15% for females. In order to have a completely ripped abdominal region with obliques and serratus definition, you'll need to have single-digit body fat. Training your abs will increase your overall core strength and will deepen the cuts in your abs, but they won't actually get them to start showing if they're not already. So by doing sit-ups and leg raises, etc., it's all well and good, but it all comes down to body fat. Okay, moving on. Assuming all exercises produce the same results. False, once again, and here's why. Many beginners think something like a chest press is a chest press regardless of what equipment sort of used to do it. So, a push-up versus a bench press. There's actually a huge difference between performing an exercise on a machine as opposed to free weights. As, machines do have their time and place, for example, during isolation exercises. However, free weights will enable you to recruit a far greater number of muscle fibers, and you also utilize secondary muscle groups as well as your core to stabilize the weight, for example on squats, deadlift, even bench to some degree. So small adjustments such as grip on an exercise, on the bar, on a isolation exercise can target different muscle groups. For example, like a row with an underhand grip will emphasize the upper lats, while the same row performed with an upper hand, whereas the same row performed with an underhand grip will place a larger emphasis on the biceps and the lower area of your lats. Okay, moving on. So our next muscle myth and mistake. if your muscles don't get pumped, you won't make gains. You know, you've obviously heard probably Arnold talking about the pump. That's false, and here's why. First of all, what is the pump? The pump is the tightening feeling caused by blood rushing to the targeted muscle in the body part you're training. For example, you're doing bicep curls, your biceps get quite tight and full, that's the pump. The pump alone does not indicate that you're making progress or that your muscles are growing. A high rep set of push-ups, for example, can be used to obtain a pump. Meanwhile, dumbbell bench pressing 130 pounds for 4, 5, 6 reps probably won't give you that pump. Even though that is far more beneficial towards your growth, performing that heavy set of less reps. Okay, moving on. You have to do cardio if you want to lose weight. This is a very big one, very, very big misconception. That's very common, and that's false as well. So cardio is a fantastic tool for burning calories, additional calories. However, cardio itself will not melt the fat off your physique like probably magazines or people at the gym, personal trainers have told you guys. So I personally very rarely perform cardio as I'm able to manipulate my weight through my diet, so my caloric intake. So weight loss comes down to calories in versus calories out, like I said before. So as long as you're burning more calories than you're consuming, you will lose weight. If you're consuming more calories than you're burning, you'll gain weight. Should you decide you'd like to add a few more calories to your diet while you're in a deficit or while you're cutting, or if you go out and have a cheat meal, for example, then cardio is a great tool to help you burn those additional calories that you've just consumed. Okay, the next one, this is a very good one. So you should lock out on all exercises. So basically that's the hyperextension at the top of a repetition. So, you know, when you completely straighten your arm, or when you're completely standing up with your legs completely straight after you've gone down and done a squat. So the hyperextension, so the top part of a repetition, often referred to as locking out, straightening up your arms at the top of a bench press, for example, can be quite counterproductive to your overall progress. Locking out is a strict requirement if you're doing powerlifting, for example, which is all well and good. However, if you're just looking to bodybuild, put on some more size via hypertrophy, etc., as you lock out with each repetition, you're taking the tension off the targeted muscle group and moving it on to joints, ligaments, etc. So when you're doing that, you're essentially allowing it to rest while your joints and tendons hold the weight. So by stopping your repetition prior to the lockout, just an inch or so beforehand, you'll maintain the stress on the targeted muscle group, which is exactly what you want to overload the muscle. Okay, moving on. So fat can turn into muscle and muscle can turn into fat. That's also completely false. So it's simply impossible for muscle to turn into fat and vice versa because they're both made up of very different types of cells. If you have prolonged absence from the gym, you don't need to worry about your muscle turning into fat. Instead, your muscle cells will shrink. Many people begin to gain weight shortly after, as their body has no longer requires, like, you know, the amount of calories you're consuming, because muscle takes quite a number of calories to, you know, to maintain and also to move. Like when you walk, if you have a decent amount of mass on you, you'll burn a lot more calories than an overweight person or a skinny person, for example. With a decrease in muscle mass, you should lower your calories as well, because you won't have that demand to maintain your current state. So if you don't lower your calories, that's when you'll begin to get fat as your muscles are getting smaller. So I can see the misconception there. They're not turning from one into the other, but it is sort of occurring at the same time unless you lower your caloric intake. Okay, moving on, guys. So you must constantly change your routine to what they call shock your body into new growth. This is completely false. You know, your muscles don't have a brain. Your muscles are just that. They're muscle. They don't have any form of cognitive intelligence, and you don't need to try and outsmart them whenever you're in the gym. They don't know what you're doing. If you hit a plateau or no longer making sufficient progress, the issue lies within either your rest times, example, you're having insufficient rest or insufficient amount of calories being consumed, or you're not getting enough rest, so, you know, sleep or time between workouts. As long as you continually begin to progressively overload your muscles with, you know, more weight, more reps, more time under tension, they'll continue to grow. Changing up your routine every other week with different exercises, different orders, different sets, different rep ranges is basically not necessary. It'll just make your workouts harder to track from my own experience. So, you know, if you're doing an incline dumbbell first of all, and then the next week you do a flat barbell, you know, have you gained strength? You can't tell because you're doing a different exercise. So it can be tricky like that, guys. So I'd avoid constantly changing if you can. Okay, so you should eat all your carbohydrates early in the day. That's a big sort of Weight Watchers misconception here. That's also false. How many times have you heard people talking about eliminating carbs after 4 p.m. or so? They reckon they'll put on more weight if they eat them later in the day. Calorie, including carbohydrate, timings have been proven irrelevant to body composition. What this means is you can consume literally all of your carbohydrates for the day right before you go to bed, and you'll see the same results as someone that eats all their carbohydrates, in 5 meals over the course of the day, or first thing in the morning even. So personally, I think carbohydrates should be tailored around your workout regime. So if you train at night, you should be consuming carbs an hour or so before, just to have some energy and can perform at an optimal level. If you consumed all your carbs early in the day, like people recommend in this case, you'll probably be left feeling tired, a bit lethargic, if you've eaten them all early and then it comes time to work out and you can't eat anything more. So that's my take on that, guys. Okay, the next one, your diet should contain minimal to no fat because it'll make you fat. That's completely false, and this is why. So dietary fibre is essential to our bodies. Fats are linked to testosterone production. If you've listened to my previous podcast or read my post on increasing testosterone naturally, you may have picked up on that. So fats are linked to test production and brain function as well. In fact, individuals that consume a larger amount of fat are less likely to develop depression and a few other things like that. Fats are also known to regulate hormone levels as well as blood glucose and insulin responses. If you're struggling to gain weight, fats can play a major role as well, because a gram of fat has 9 calories as opposed to 4 calories in both proteins and carbs per gram, that is. So fat can be used effectively to increase your overall caloric intake with ease. So instead of adding 2 cups of broccoli to your diet, throw in a tablespoon of organic almond or peanut butter even. And that's quite calorie dense for the size and ease of what you're eating there, guys. Okay, and getting towards the end, so this is our second last muscle myth here. Protein powder is necessary for all lifters if they want to make progress, make gains in the gym. False. How many people have you heard say, more protein powder equals more muscle, companies trying to shovel protein down your throat, etc. It's just a big money-making industry, guys, so avoid that. So consuming any more than, say, 1.5 grams of protein maximum per pound of lean muscle mass. So that's your total weight minus your body fat percentage, so not just your actual weight, but your lean muscle mass. Regardless of whether this protein comes from protein powder or chicken breast, it's a waste if you're consuming more. Excess amounts of protein are converted into amino acids and nitrogen, which are just then excreted, so it's a waste of money and waste of time eating lots of chicken if that's what's happening. So just make sure you're calculating those numbers correctly and you're all good. So yeah, the thing is basically, guys, with this protein is protein. So the good thing about supplementing with protein is that you can hit your 200 grams per day or 150 grams per day, whatever that magic number is for you, without having to constantly eat steaks and chicken and whatnot. So, the assumption that protein shakes themselves build mass is quite a common newbie misconception. But yeah, it's just sort of ease of access, and it's convenient. It's pretty cheap as well, guys. And our last muscle myth for today is eating takeouts, so ice cream and other unhealthy foods, Burger King, etc., will make you fat. Believe it or not, this is actually false, and this stems back to the IIFYM, if it fits your macros whole movement, which basically states a calorie is a calorie. So the source of this calorie is in relation to body composition. So body composition being, your body fat, the way you look, how much muscle mass you have, is actually irrelevant. So fat gained is a result of a calorie surplus. So you're eating more than your body needs in terms of energy levels. So for example, if your daily energy expenditure is 2,500 calories and you're eating 3,000 calories, it doesn't matter if that's coming from broccoli or beans or veggies, whatever. If you're eating that much more, you're going to be gaining weight over time. So a calorie surplus, so your calories are calculated on 24, 48 and 72 hour basis. So, as long as you don't need to space out your meals in the day, like I said earlier, as long as you're getting that all in within a day, you're fine. So yeah, that's the only way you'll get fat, by eating more calories than your body needs. It doesn't matter what you eat, as long as you're eating less, or you're eating that magic number that you've figured out for you. If you'd like to figure out how to calculate your TDEE, which is your total daily energy expenditure, you can check out my posts on dieting on ignorelimits.com. And that's basically it for today, guys. Thanks for listening.